Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Capitura. I'm here with Dr. Sharif Ibrahim. We're going to focus on sugar once again. Sugar is a big topic for Sharif and I. We, in the past, were talking a lot about metabolic syndrome, and we want to gravitate back towards that. As we go back towards talking about those issues, we have to go through sugar. Today, we want to talk more about sugar and its addictive qualities and how this manifests, how this actually comes to be. And then a lot of people use the excuse of, oh, I have a sweet tooth. What does that actually mean? You hear it all the time, oh, I have a sweet tooth. And people use it as the excuse for them to have an extra dessert every time. I know that because I'm one of those people who claims to have a sweet tooth. So Sharif, let's get started and talk more about sugar, that addictive behaviors, and those sorts of things.
Yes, I think sugar addiction is real. Why? Because sugar addiction produce strong hormones in the brain. One of them is dopamine, and dopamine is the feeling good hormone. And people, when they have it, they don't really want to let go. The other hormone is serotonin, which is the happy hormone. And also people want to stay as happy. This is why people, when they get addicted to sugar, they continue to eat sugar. And that eventually can result in weight gain and can result in obesity and overweight.
You mentioned all these chemical situations that happen, and people are, well, what's wrong with me having the dopamine shot? What's wrong with me having sugar and feeling happy about having sugar? We're talking about your health here, not your happiness so much. Would you agree with that, Sharif?
People feel very compelled to eat sugar because they want the chemical effect. But on the other hand, most of them are not really aware about the problem, or sometimes they try to not feel aware about the problem. For example, they eat sugar all the time when they are not hungry, and they eat sugar fast, like a sugar binging effect or binge eating disorder. When you talk about the eating disorder, people will start going back again, thinking about anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa. But these are really very tiny percentage of the population. Bulimia nervosa in males is 0.5% of the population, and in female is 1.5% of the population. While if you're talking about binge eating, 70% of the population in America, they are binge eater.
That's a huge thing, especially in America. Culturally, that's what a lot of people will do. I know that growing up, I get 10 bags of chips. Why? We were going to play some board games, so we wanted chips to eat. I remember buying a box of ice cream sandwiches, a box of 24 of those. And my son and I, while we were playing video games together, the whole box would be gone. And there's that addiction. And you're right, that chemical release. Now that I know you, Sharif, now that I talk to you, I realize we were staying up late at night. We were going into the wee hours of the morning. And that constant feeding of sugar was keeping us going. We kept releasing the chemicals. And of course, I gained some serious weight, but I also did a lot of damage to my body with all that sugar coming in there. So I totally get that. And on the other side of it is fast food. People will say, oh, I haven't had fast food in forever. And they go and they have it, and then they want to have it again, and they want to have it again. And people say it's addictive. Well, of course it is, because most fast food is full of nothing more than sugar, which again, Sharif, you're talking about right there. So you're so right on the craving side of things.
I think you have really made a very good explanation of binge eating, because binge eating, when people eat quite a lot at one time, at one sitting, they eat quite a lot, they eat continuously, they eat fast, and they eat at odd times, and they eat when they are alone, and they eat at night. So they feel very hungry and they eat quite a lot, and then they go to sleep, and then they wake up again when the sugar goes down in their blood and the other hormones are coming down as well. Then they want to eat again.
So many small interesting things that we've covered in previous videos. One is you're binge eating at night. You're tired. You're not hungry. And you need to reconsider that. We covered that topic in another video in the past, so take a look at some of them. And the other one that you said, which I thought was fascinating, was how your body will wake you up in the middle of the night if it doesn't have the sugar that it's looking for. And again, we've covered this in a previous video. And so it's a vicious cycle that you wake up and there's always that quintessential shot of somebody opening up their refrigerator door in the middle of the night with the eyes are half open and they're grabbing that piece of chocolate cake because the body is dictating, again, the addiction, the addictive qualities of sugar. It's calling you to the refrigerator at 2:00 in the morning because there's not enough of what it wants in the body. It will dictate, and you're there eating it. And like you said, quickly and without reason, you're just consuming it. And it's not a good thing. That's where we get into the binge / craving, which is another part of this.
Yes, I think that the craving, they can't resist. The craving is a very strong desire to eat sugar. And they can't resist that. They have to eat it by hook or crook. I think this is a time when they can steal, actually. Before, if they haven't got enough sugar on this, they can steal that because it's a very unresistible, really feeling. And then that many times it's break down into impulsive eating. So that's what happens to people. And because, most of sugar addicted people, they are aware about the fact that they are sugar addicts. And so they try to hide the habit. They try to hide it from other people. And they always making some explanation. For example, I had been eating too much sugar because I had been very busy at work or something like that. Or I have bought them a sport game, which I'm going to play or something. They always try to find some explanation. And very interestingly, sugar addicts, they're always talking about, the meal is not going to be complete without a dessert. They're always talking about that.
Yeah, so that's where we talk about the sweet tooth, right? And what will be for dessert? I remember when I was in Montreal, I had friends who wouldn't even go out for the meal. We would just go out for dessert. And guess what? It was late at night. Oh, well, let's not waste our calories on a meal. Let's go out for dessert. And we'd go out and have crepes at 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I'd wake up with a headache and I didn't understand why.
Yes, and they wake up actually with something else really very common, which is bloating. Because I think when they eat this sugar excessively, that is going to wake up the yeast, the candida in the gut. You see, the candida overgrowth is a very common feature of sugar addiction. So they're always having bloating, quite often building up gas and a very uncomfortable situation. And they can't really get rid of it. This is all due to excessive intake of sugar. Also, I have seen so many patients in hospital with skin condition. They're having toenail fungus, or they're having athlete's foot. And this is all due to high sugar in their body systems. And this comes out in the sweat and attract the fungi, the fungus or yeast in their skin, particularly between the toes. And when you ask, what is your food? What do you eat? Oh, yes, we eat a little bit more sugar and a little bit more carbs. And that is exactly the problem. So when they start cutting back on their sugar and carbs, then this is going to help them clear this fungal infection, and it's going to help their tummy actually be a little bit more comfortable.
Now, it's interesting because before that can happen, some people get to the part of this tolerance and they're eating so much sugar that their body's not even making them aware of it anymore. It's just they can absolutely handle it. And I am, again, going to bring up a story. At one point in my life, Sharif, I would get a pound of jelly candies and I would eat them without reservation. Consume them all probably in one sitting. Not probably, I know I did. And I could go get another bag if I had the desire to. And my body would just take in all this sugar. The funny thing is now, when the holidays come up, the old traditions of that candy, they rise up, and I'll go have a couple of them, and I'll feel all of these things you're talking about now because my body's like, what are you doing? What is this? And we don't want this in us.
Yes, I think so. Yes, yeah. Because we see scientifically what happens, there is a down regulation of the sugar receptors. it will go down in number and in sensitivity as well. And let us take another example. Those who start drinking alcohol, initially they start by a small glass of beer, and then they'll be very happy with that. But eventually, after a few months or few years, you find them drinking a full bottle of whiskey without really having the same effect. So exactly the same. This is a tolerance, because down regulation of the receptors, so they feel that the dose has to go up every time because they are not really feeling the dose well. So they have to increase the dose continuously for the same effect to happen in the future.
As a young man, I was involved in a wonderful harmony singing organization. And every year in January, we would go to an event and be about 300 men there. And most of them drink. There was one guy in particular that always blew my mind, was that he would drink with everyone. And by the end of the evening, everyone was either asleep, drunk, or passed out. His consumption rate was astonishing. I was like, wow, this guy can really hold his liquor. I should check in to see if he's even alive today, because this is 35 years ago. Probably died of some sort of liver disorder just by the amount of alcohol or that tolerance level that he had created over the years. You're so right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because you see here, we are talking, when you talk about sugar, alcohol, and drugs, it's exactly the same effect, because they use the same system, the reward system in the brain, which produce dopamine and produce serotonin. So it's exactly the same system. And the sugar effect on the liver is exactly the same as the alcohol effect, because these guys, they start by having fatty liver initially, and then they will go into a bit of inflammation of the liver, and then they will go into a liver fibrosis and cirrhosis. And liver cirrhosis is really a very bad condition, because liver cirrhosis, actually you lose most of the liver function, and the liver is a very important organ of the body. And actually this condition is a precancerous condition. Many people, they end up having liver cancer. I mean, I don't really want to take it that far, but I think what we should really do at this stage is to break down the habit as soon as possible.
That's interesting, because we're talking about eliminating or reducing the amount of sugar taking into your body. I remember 6 years ago that I actually went through that process, almost like a detox. And as I came out of sugar, it was very difficult, and it took a couple of tries. So for those of you listening that are now considering, oh, I need to get away from sugar, good for you if you can do it in the first try, but it took me several tries. And I remember each time there were a lot of side effects of not having the sugar, and my body screaming at me, the craving side of me, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, just like any other addiction, screaming for me to go back to this and to regulate my body back into what the sugar wanted. There's a lot of withdrawal effects that happen when we finally do step away from sugar. So let's talk a little bit about those. There's some serious reasons why people won't bother because of some of these effects.
Yeah, I think the most effect will be on the brain. Many people, when they stop eating sugar and they go into a sugar detox, as they call it, they start having headaches, which is really very bad. And sometimes they have something like muscle pain. They are very fatigued, because sugar is the thing that energizes the body. So they feel extremely fatigued and tired. Brain fogs are a very common feature of, and then anxiety and depression. And many patients, they describe having their body shaking involuntarily. It's a feature which we probably due to low sugar in the blood or in the brain. It's a very common situation.
I remember when I came off sugar, I would say for good, where I don't have an addiction to it anymore. I will still have sugar occasionally. I still love donuts, still love ice cream, still love cookies, but they don't call to me anymore. I don't have to eat them. I can pass by them anytime I want. But I remember it was about 9 or 10 weeks that I went with no sugar at all. Like I just had to break the 30, 60-day barriers. And I remember how awful it was. There's anxiety that comes from nowhere. I mean, everything in my life is relatively good, generally speaking, but all of a sudden you're feeling this anxiety, and it's the condition of breaking that habit of sugar. as you're doing this, be sure to remind yourself of what you're doing to your body, how you're bringing yourself to a better place, how you are going to be healthier, and be okay with the fact that sometimes you may have these waves. It might hit depression for you, but you need to remind yourself, or at least the people who are around you, have them remind you this is part of the process. The brain fog is part of the process. And the headaches. One thing I would do is I would drink water. That helped me. It may not be the remedy for all of you, but if I was well hydrated, I found that the symptoms were lessened, and I don't have the cravings anymore because my body just needs to be hydrated, sleep well, and like Sharif said, eat the right food, going back to Mother Nature. Any final thoughts for today?
I think all what you have said is in about your history is due to the fact that because you have got this sweet tooth. When I see patients in the clinic, actually, I ask them some questions, whether they have this sweet tooth or not. And very clearly, there are two groups of people. One group of people have got less receptors, less sugar receptors in their body. And hence, they need more sugar and more carbs. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, they can eat carbs or they can eat sugar. So they always want to eat either something sweet, or if there is no anything sweet, then they would be happy to eat white rice, for example, or white bread, or anything with high carbs on it, pasta, something like that. They'll be happy. Other group of people with a sweet tooth as well, they only be interested in eating something sweeter. So it's the sensitivity of the receptors, which is the problem. The receptors are less sensitive to sugar. So they're always wanting to eat something sweeter. Or sometimes if they couldn't find something sweeter, they add more sugar to their food to make it sweeter. And as you said, there are simple hints. They are really very effective in helping people to give up the habit, but they have to go very gradually. Some people, they just really want to go immediately, cold turkey, which works with some people, but it's not always with everybody. I remember one of my first calls, this Rescuing Your Health, and I asked people, go to your house and you look everywhere for sugar and carbs and put them in a bag and take it outside your house. This is the beginning of your getting back to health. But without doing that, these things are going to be around you, and it's going to be like a big temptation actually to come back again to the habit. So this is actually what happens to people who are always having relapses. But if you take everything away and you just really push it outside your house, then you'll be safe.
Yeah, well, I know that if there's cookies in the house, they're not here for long, and that's because I'll eat them. So to this day, I have to be careful about what I bring into the house. Well, as always, Sharif, thanks for all the great content today. Thanks, everyone, for watching today's video. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care. Sharif and I appreciate you liking this video, and more importantly, remember to subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of content that we're going to be creating, and we don't want you to miss a single second of it.